Hey friends, it's Jeff. Two things. First, this upcoming episode may not be for everybody, but it was an episode I needed. Many of us stateside in America are looking for some perspective on what we're feeling about this moment in time. Obviously, our issues may have bled over into your world if you're not in the United States. Sorry about that. But I wanted to do some processing with Mandy Capehart, who is an expert in grief counseling, and so that's where we're going. Second, my audio is a little rocky throughout. The mic shifted to my headphones, but the content was so important I decided to hit go. I hope this meets you where you're at, and may all good things be yours.
Hey friends, it's Jeff. This is Around the Circle. I am with Mandy Capehart. Mandy has the high distinction of being my favorite guest who comes on routinely, throws wisdom around like it's nothing every time she's on. And since I'm in a spot where I need some help, she's the person to call. I'm thrilled that you're with me, Mandy.
You're too kind, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you for always inviting me back. It's always a joy.
For those of you who are not aware, Mandy does grief counseling and just is stellar at her craft. But also weaves that with a ton of Enneagram knowledge. And the last time we spoke was in December of 2024. And some of us at the time were in a spot where we need to talk about a different kind of grief. And it was a grief that wasn't just about like the loss locally, but the loss nationally. And some of us were really wrestling with that. And I would love to say that things have changed, but some of us are still in that spot and need to have another session, pep talk. What does it look like for a healthy person to navigate a world like ours? I would love to set up that obviously we're not in a war zone, at least where I'm at. You know, I'm not seeing carnage, and yet it feels like so much is lost and falling apart for me. Yeah. And that's where I want to go today. So I want to set this up in a way that doesn't just, like many of you have listened to me for a while, probably could earmark my political leanings, but I had a list of things that I think just that we all share. And I wanted to pitch these because it just sets the foundation for what I grieve right now. Mm-hmm. And it's mostly around the fact that we don't have a shared culture anymore. And that by that, I mean, we don't have shared facts. There are some values that we just don't seem to be entrenched in us for a long time as a people. And I'm speaking mostly, obviously, or I'm speaking about Americans presently in this conversation. But I see it in the breaking apart of my family along lines, school systems that are in my state. I see splitting, church communities I've been a part of splitting. We see just gross examples of this in terms of the federal government and state authorities being at odds to where local police are having to police federal agents. That seems like such a destabilizing vision. And obviously we're seeing citizens being killed by those who are sent to serve and protect. And all of these things just create a underlying feeling of, kind of, I don't want to just call it despair, but I'm certainly depressed at times. It's a national thing. It's not my family locally, and it's not necessarily even my city. And so that's what I want to talk about. So that's my setup. What comes to your mind first as we dive into this?
So casually, that's what I want to talk about.
Casually.
Yeah. Well, I think that the lens of humor about it is such a helpful approach for us to kind of disarm the intensity, right? First and foremost, these are not small concerns. They are interwoven with one another and so many other things that you didn't name. And there's no way for any one of us as individuals to solve the crises that we feel, right? These are moral injuries that we're experiencing, that we're witnessing. And acknowledging our privilege is huge. We're not necessarily in a very dangerous situation personally, right? In our immediate locations, we might feel some kind of physical safety, which is great and important. what we're bearing witness to, in my opinion, is a lot of really fear-driven character decisions, not because people are inherently bad. I don't think that they are. I think that character is developed over time. And when we have been married to value systems that are not driven by love, but are driven by fear, looking for power and grasping for protection and control, that ends up leaving us in states of dysregulation that are just ongoing, right? Where we are having these traumatic responses, but we don't recognize them as such because it's how we've always responded, right? We've always gotten small when someone really loud is in the room so that we can feel safe. Whatever our method of approaching safety has been, it continues in crisis. And so when you see the framework of the place you live crumbling and you're afraid, it is natural to go into a very small circle. It's very natural to say, I'm going to protect me and mine, and I'm going to reject what doesn't feel like safety for me and mine. And what that becomes really uncomfortable with for the rest of us who are, like you said, witnessing these institutions and leaders that we may or may not have looked up to, but certainly that helped shape us, make decisions that don't resonate, that don't seem reasonable, that don't feel like the person we thought they were, or for whatever reason are disappointing. It's so much bigger than, well, we don't agree 100% with everybody. Well, everyone makes mistakes. Well, everybody has an opportunity for redemption, right? There are so many caveats we make. They're almost like platitudes for grief work. When we say everything happens for a reason, we are just washing over the reality of what's there to try and feel better about what we cannot control. And when I look at the situation of people defending behaviors that appear personally deeply indefensible, it's such a dishonest argument to say, well, of course they're human too. They are human. Can you imagine being human and saying, you have to be okay with me doing these horrible things to other people because that's my belief system, that's my character. Yeah, there's so many different things I would like to say as well.
I would love to jump into just defending the indefensible for a second.
Sure.
Because part of my deep sorrow comes in these spaces that it's not simply that there are things in our culture that need to get called out. It's that some of the people who are really aggressive about calling out immoral conduct in our culture have been the most silent when things are egregious.
Yeah.
And it's befuddling to me.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of relationships with such people. They get texts from me all the time saying, you have a microphone. You should say something about this. And the response being very personal for them because it probably they believe it will cost them their job.
Yeah.
And to circle back, that's where the fear-drivenness of so many of our issues seems to be. So many people seem to be propelled not by targeting goodness, reason, thriving, winning together, celebrating one another. Our decisions seem to be so based in fear. Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem healthy to me. What do you think?
It isn't. It's not. It's a activation of survival mode, right? So silence is often a trauma response, not just a stance of morality, not an I agree with them, so why would I speak it out? It is a place where, again, we can get small and stay quiet and maybe go unnoticed in what feels like a large threat coming into the room, right? It always makes me think about in Jurassic Park when the kids are scrambling through the building and hiding in the kitchen and trying so hard to stay safe. And you've got these giant ancient creatures stalking them. What do? They get small and quiet and they hide and they try to run and then they get caught almost. And then there's constant threat, constant panic. And even though they're trying their very best, they're still under a threat. And so they don't have the opportunity to be rational and regulated and think about what their values are. Do we really want to harm this ancient creature that's been resurrected? Right? It's so ridiculous, but it's at the same time, it's such a great picture of what our very ancient nervous system is going through in those moments. And we know too, like when we confront someone and say, hey, this your silence doesn't really align with who you are. I'm really surprised. There is a very rare person who can respond without defensiveness,
Right.
right? To have the ability to approach someone who say that we're offended at their silence and say, hey, can we talk? I'm really worried that you aren't speaking out about this. Part of that is this idea that every time we speak out, we're moving mountains, right? You and I have microphones, and so we must be incredible world changers, when the reality is our influence is small, and that is important. That's a really great experience, because when we're facing all of these really big experiences, what we want is macro action. We want huge mountains to move and systems to change, but what we're capable of are micro conversations and micro moments. So when we approach someone and think we're going to change the whole church system, for example, by talking to this one friend of ours who's a pastor who trusts us, we can't just rely on our relationship to them. We have to know that if I go in and I'm in any way dysregulated, and that doesn't mean I'm being naturally respectful and calm and quiet the whole time. That means, can I handle when they push back without taking it personally? Can I keep my own availability open and curious as opposed to critical and closed? Can I regulate myself to a state where they're going to probably get upset or frustrated? Can I stay present? Can I let them go through what they're going through without saying, hey, watch your tone, don't talk to me like that? Can I actually let them get that energy through themselves? So I can say, okay, look, I'm still here. The reason I'm coming to you is because the values you have led me with or led this relationship with are not showing up in your silence. They're actually missing completely in the way you're moving around the world around you. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to get a microphone and start speaking from the rooftops. What it does mean is that people who know you are listening. We're all looking to one another for relationship and connection and ideas and guidance, whether this is a leader or not. We want to know that we're on the same page with each other in our immediate communities, because if that's the case, then all of the bots and all of the lies and all of the intense manipulation and disinformation going around are a lot easier to write off as propaganda and nonsense if I can look around and say, anecdotally, my experience doesn't agree with that. Does yours? Well, how about yours? And the more people that are able to genuinely connect, not fight dysregulated, the more likely it is that small cultural movements like that are able to grow and eventually affect macro change, right? Because I say this all the time in my grief work, like, would I love a public stage? Sure, because then I could encourage multiple people at once. But what I love about my one-on-one coaching is I can help one person understand themselves differently, and then that person shows up differently with every person they interact with. So there's still a macro effect. It's just not, national stage macro effects, which, to be fair, doesn't sound very fun.
No, agreed. There is, so those who know me, I'm not passive aggressive. I'm generally aggressive. Is that a category? Do we share that category?
Yep. Yeah, I used to say that all the time as a teenager. I was like, if I'm aggressive, do I get in less trouble or more trouble? Because I don't know.
I thoroughly concur that the one-on-one interactions are far more fruitful.
Yeah.
I spend way too much time bantering online, and I know it's a fruitless exercise, but unfortunately, I'm an addict, apparently. The thing that I would love to talk about is when the aggressiveness does not work, and you hit that spot where you're looking around saying, look, I gave my best effort, and everything is still on fire. They are building a detainment camp nearby in my state that is twice the size of the largest prison in America. And that sort of thing just bugs me. And I don't know what I could do anything about
What a
that.
calm
As-
response. That sort of thing just bugs me.
just kind of,
Yeah.
it irks, just kind of irks. My sense, both of us are body types. You're an Enneagram 8, I'm an Enneagram 1. Both of us are justice oriented, and I get to compound my justice orientation with a healthy dose of idealism. And when I hit these spots, what I've been told recently is that ones aren't aware of the fact that they're grieving so much. And that's what I assume is taking place in me.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of national grief,
Yeah.
I would love to talk about that because it's different than the death of a parent.
Right.
It's different than I got sick. What is that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's because we are communal beings. We want and require attunement. Another person whose nervous system can regulate mine. And that attunement between people is so crucial. But when we are living in a state where we are more isolated than usual, and we saw this really hit hard during COVID when everyone had intense isolation and fear and anger and every emotion, right? There's so much uncertainty that we are deeply offended that we cannot control and create some kind of certainty, right? When you think about like the question, what's your plan? What are you going to be doing 10 years in the future? It's such a beautiful and optimistic, let's do some long-term planning kind of a conversation. But rarely, if ever, is there a conversation that includes what's your 10-year plan and what are you doing today? Because tomorrow might not be here. But we're so ready for certainty that we can't imagine, right? There's another platitude. I can't imagine what you're going through. Okay, well, we don't have to imagine it anymore. We're now witnessing deeper isolation, deeper uncertainty, deeper breakdown of communication between peoples who in the past could very easily say, it's okay, we just don't talk about politics and religion. When now it feels so impossible not to, especially for people like you and I who are very righteousness and justice oriented, who want to see humanity honored for the sake of being human and for the sake of being a breathing entity. But then I'm such a Franciscan by heart. Like I see trees and sometimes I'll cry at the beauty of them. Just today I was looking at scrolling through the internet, like not doom scrolling, genuinely just looking for beautiful moments to take in and witness for myself. And there was a butterfly sitting on the nose of a puppy. And I thought, yep, that's one of them. And there was an actor reading a poem, and there's another moment of beauty, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want everyone to see those little moments and think this is worth everything it would cost me. But because we are so afraid and we're not used to, in our privilege, having to be cost something, having to pay something because we spoke out or because we are standing up for something, we're totally afraid that when we lose something, nothing will be restored to us. You and I both know a very great biblical allegory that goes along those lines, but I'm going to put it in the terms of what I talk with my soccer girls, because I coach 11 and 12-year-olds. They are learning it is okay to trust your teammate and pass the ball, because if they do that and learn to reposition their bodies, they can believe that they're going to receive the ball back again. It's not just about this is mine, I have the ball and I get to do what I want. We don't need everybody to be the hot shot. This is a team sport. And in my opinion, being part of a community that has this much larger governing body, we're a freaking team sport, but we've got some very selfish ball hogs on the field who can't fathom that other people think they're any worth being on the same pitch as me, right? The metaphor is going to get out of control, so I'll stop there. But my point is, it is safer for us to be culturally outraged and like take the halftime show, right? It's safer for me to yell online than to go and talk with someone who is affected by racism toward Puerto Ricans, right? It is safer for me to reshare something instead of use my own words, right? Whether that's I'm going to share it to a community. I mean, you and I probably do the same thing. We use Threads differently than we use Instagram, differently than we use Facebook, right? Depending on the audience. How do we communicate without threatening our belonging? Well, you and I both have threatened our belonging plenty of times by being very outspoken and mouthy online, and in a
Mm.
way that is so personal. I think the part of it where we have to honor that outrage, honor the hurt, honor the grief, honor the sorrow we have at this collective falling apart, is to move from a place of certainty that I'm right, they're wrong, right? Away from dichotomies. Although, of course, we know there are a few things that are non negotiable, don't cause harm, into a place of lived values, right? You and I have different values that we live through right here and now. That doesn't mean we don't align in a lot of ways. It means my priority is going to be different than yours. And that awareness of our values can be positive or negative values, but our awareness of them allows us to make decisions that are very much informed by who we believe ourselves to be as people. When I look at the world at large right now, generally speaking, I don't think many people are really considering what their values are as they make decisions, right? And small decisions versus big decisions, they all matter. I don't mean for us to become locked in decision fatigue by trying to consider a value with everything that we do. Do I buy this box of cereal or this box of cereal? Do I buy the bag of cereal? Is the bag too much plastic? Well, there's plastic inside the box of cereal too. Which one's better for the environment? I don't mean becoming obsessive in this way. I mean, as I'm going toward this difficult coworker, if my value is compassion, how do I approach them compassionately? How do I approach myself compassionately? I'm being harmed in this situation. I'm being mistreated, but I want to still be compassionate because this is who I am. This is who I believe myself to be. But we only embody those values if we actually live them out. And so for me, where I have become so outraged, right, culturally, is when I hear the values people claim and proclaim as their identity or as part of how they live. And then I see and I hold up the behavior or the silence and I hold up the perspectives and I say, help me make sense of it. It doesn't. Again, that is a threat. People can become so easily dysregulated because if that were said to you, Jeff, they're challenging your identity. They're challenging the way you live and move through the world. Of course, you're going to be defensive. So it is our job to challenge it for ourselves and allow someone then to observe us. Here's what it looks like to live as a witness, right? What do I look like if I am being myself, if I am holding myself accountable? And am I willing to let people see that part of me? The good, bad, and the ugly. Am I willing to let someone recognize? Am I willing to let someone say, hey, you keep saying you're a compassionate person, but you just cussed out a stranger on the internet? To be fair, I probably cussed out a bot, but did I? You're right. That's not me, right? You get to decide. How do you let people see you? I think that those values really do allow us to break the, addiction to hot takes on the internet for the sake of shouting people down and move us toward offering a better witness, offering the reality to say, well, here's why this matters. And if your economic safety is your highest value, thank you for being honest, but be honest.
I think that what you're saying pushes the problem back just slightly because there's at times in my heart and mind, there's an assumption that the person in front of me who I love and care about actually responds to reason and goodness, actually values consistency. Yeah. And it's shocking when I find they don't. And the ways that rhetoric in particular in our culture move. One of the people I adore most in the world is a 7 who won't sit still in the midst of our conversations about important matters and will consistently, when the point is made, jump to the next point or jump to some other topic to avoid doing some business with what seems to me really important things to talk about. I do share the intuition that consistently putting forth a better witness is quite valuable. I myself have not embraced the value of not cussing people out online. I am the Lord Jesus needs to do work on me on that front. But what my grief is like begins to get manifest in is that we're actually hitting that spot where we actually have to provoke people with displays of goodness and expose injustice in very self, in ways. The things that have cut in our culture recently is people experiencing great violence, and the only thing that we can say is to our countrymen, are you okay with this? Are you okay with this being who we are now? And that is both a place, I think, of power, but it's also a place of deep grief. And I wonder if there's actually a link there as I'm saying it, that like speaking out of your grief actually has some is a place where maybe that's where we have to go in order to get things moving.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think witnessing is crucial for grief work. One that you talk to, whether you witness to yourself aloud. I talk to myself aloud all the time. I just finished writing an essay about speaking aloud as a journaling activity and then forgetting what you said or recording it and deleting it for the sake of moving the thought, the energy out of your body into a state of metabolism, like metabolizing it out of your body, right? So if our emotions, sensations in the body, we feel them, we can sense that thing happening within us. It is our mind that applies meaning to it. And I think when we get into these states where we're so agitated and we don't process, we hold it in for whatever reason, we leave fueling the same thing that's keeping everyone else silent. We are fueling our dysregulation. And it doesn't matter if we are typical fighters who will push back. It doesn't matter if we're fleers who will run away and dismiss or deflect, or freezers who shut down and go disengaged, or a lot of the time where I would go is fawning. I would placate and I would just say like, yeah, totally. Now knowing what I know of myself, like later in life, it makes a whole lot of sense. But I think where we're really finding an opportunity to kind of recognize it's not about people not wanting reason. Again, it goes back to people are dysregulated because we are challenging their identity framework. It's why I love Enneagram work so much, because it allows us to challenge our identity framework in a safe way without attaching ourselves overly to our personality, right? But taking Christianity as an example, Western Christianity is a very deep identity system. And so for either of us or anyone to look at that identity system and say, you've allowed it to detach you from your humanity, sounds so counter. But to criticize one piece of it means we have to unravel the whole thing very delicately, very kindly, or maybe not so delicately, but always with kindness. How do we take a look at this and say, well, this actually might need to come apart so we can reassemble? And there's, say what you will for the whole deconstruction, I'm going to say movement, which is so minimizing of the millions of people who've been pulling religion apart for generations. But it makes me think about this opportunity with people who we perceive to be unreasonable. They're afraid and they need someone to understand and offer softness. I don't mean like agreeing with them. I don't mean backing down. I definitely don't mean tone policing or playing respectability politics, as we've said. And I don't mean just, biting your tongue and taking the harm. I do mean refraining from dehumanizing them, but also not abandoning ourselves in conversation, and recognizing that our nervous systems can be escalated, and it is okay to say, hey, let's just pause for a second. I'm going to go this way, you go that way. We're coming back together in a few minutes. I will let you be the one that comes back to me. But if you haven't come back in 20 minutes, I will come to you, right? Not parenting the situation, not controlling, but leading it through this regulated state, knowing there's vulnerability here. This person is taking a risk by not throwing me out. How do I continue to show up, not to persuade them, but to help our states, our inner states of our nervous system, to become more attuned to each other, to become a little bit more similar, so that we can contain this dysregulation and maybe have a conversation that feels what you might say as rational. But really, it's just two people naming experiences, being humans together, and taking it out of that macro state where we're trying to protect our religion and generations of our belief system, and pull it back down into this moment where two people are just talking and trying to understand how they've grown so distant. How did we become so different? Well, maybe we actually aren't, but one of us believed A and the other believed B, and then we both internalized it in kind of isolation for a really long time, instead of witnessing each other and recognizing, hey, what you're believing is really contradictory to what you were saying the other day. Help me understand. Or do you understand?
The reminder of humanity, I think, is absolutely essential across the board. Many of those who are much more progressive than me, I routinely hear in their language a dehumanizing posture towards those they disagree with, in terms of the ability of, quote unquote, the other side to communicate or change or repent, or now, since you voted this way last time, we won't welcome you, has been a very large topic in my circles recently. I wonder if, and I want to bring Enneagram into it at this point, what I'm hearing from both of us, so both of us are going to be body types. Both of us are going to have a high valuing of justice, and that is that we want to have a sense of shalom and wholeness, not only within, but externally. I assume as an 8, when the world is in chaos, you feel your vulnerability more than others. And for myself, when things are dysregulated, I feel it as something is flawed, and therefore things are not. It's not just that they're not right, but that I know when things are not sound and right, the real pain will eventually emerge, I think is in essence where my mind goes. It's pivoting to heart types and head types who are going to have a different motive. I thought you were right in saying when your identity is dysregulated, there's some core stuff going on for a lot of us that may be under the surface. And I know for many, what the just it's about, I assume for heart types, it may not actually be about anything in the political sphere. It's really about the people that I do life with. That's actually where my motive and opinions and the rest. If I were to embrace X, I would have to leave my social group. That might be, that's like very broad brush, quick way to do it, but you'll know this. There's lots of institutions that can control lots of people by saying, do you really want to be an outsider?
I do think that heart and head types want justice as well. That's the beauty of this, is it kind of gives us, awareness of like, what is our big trigger point? What's the button you push and you will activate us regardless of what's going on? I really feel that it's a lens that we're looking through the world. I'll say it this way, whenever I explain to people why the Enneagram work is so helpful, is because you can invite one of every type on a hike and everyone will say yes for a different reason, right? Those motives are the thing that hits the closest to home. What is it that was unsafe for us as little people? What is it that we feel we can influence or control now as older people? And when you threaten that little person inside me, when you reactivate or trigger that wound I've been carrying that I may or may not recognize, how am I going to respond in a way that creates that sense of safety for me again? And for grievers and people who may not even realize they're grieving, we've got these predictive tracks that our brain runs on to give us safety again. And so when we are doing the grief work of any kind, we are trying to reignite awareness around what can keep us safe and retrain those patterns, right? We're trying to rewire the nervous system to respond differently. Where the Enneagram helps us with that is it can help us see like the lens. What are the things that really send you over the edge? And how do you typically perceive that information? How are you taking in that information and processing it before you make a decision? All of this is subconscious, which makes it really challenging. But to stay on that justice mentality that you and I share, when I see harm done, it comes in so quickly. And younger me says, this is not how you treat children. This is not how you treat
Mm-hmm.
people. You treat them
Mm-hmm.
all with kindness. You raised me to treat them all with kindness. You raised me to see them all as the image of God. You raised me. And this is not criticizing my parents. This is criticizing culture. You told me everyone mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you've changed your mind because it makes you what? Stronger, more powerful, make more money. What is it? And I will be very diligent in saying, no, I still don't think I understand because I do not hear clarity and I do not see justice. So it must not be right just yet. That's a very 8 approach to that kind of experience in life. A 3 is going to have a very different approach to how they address seeing injustice, right? Have a very different ability to move toward it and to confront it. And I think that this is where Enneagram really allows us to use our intelligence centers and recognize, okay, what's my primary intelligence center? What's my supportive? And what's the one that's repressed? Where do I struggle to apply my different types of intelligence to help me through this? Because those are resources that we have. It's just another modality. It's not the end all be all, but this is a resource that we have, is our Enneagram type, is understanding we have access to these other parts of ourself that are intelligent, that take in information and can process it. The healthy approach, define that however you want, is to recognize, where are my blind spots? What am I not seeing? Can I name that without being hypercritical of myself for missing it in the first place? That's a really hard spot for people. It's a really big part why we love our comfort zones, why we don't explore our repressed centers, because our dominant intelligence center has allowed us to stay safe and neglect the other areas because we've lived in privilege and safety for a really long time, all things considered. Okay, so if that's not the case for all of us now, then how do we create safety for ourselves and also extend that safety and that nuance towards someone with whom we deeply disagree?
I like that you keep bringing it back to this, the local expression.
Yeah.
And I think that the naming of the repressed center is really healthy. When you were talking about your own exercise of getting out your emotions on a piece of paper or speaking them out loud, in retrospect, it sounds like you trying to get in touch with your feelings about the matter, correct?
Yeah.
And when I heard it, all I thought is, oh, that's a great exercise for thinking repressed people like me, for a very different reason.
Yep.
When I get my thoughts on paper, it's of that sort. I know how I feel about things. I just don't know why I feel these things. I need to write it down to figure it out.
It's why I'm always like, you're not a journaler. I have 30 other ways for you to learn how to be a journaler, because it is life altering. And we put it off so quickly. Oh, I'm not a writer. I don't write. Do you talk? Have you ever talked to someone? Have you ever yelled at your television? Guess what you're doing, beloved? That's journaling your rage. So sorry. So sorry to be the one to actually point out, I'm not sorry at all. This is sarcasm. I'm so grateful to see that you are able to express what is deep within you that needs out. If you shouted at something that was recording you, does it not feel better to have it out of you? Maybe it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't. That's okay. That's when we learn rage is not the only emotion that needs to be expressed. Are you also sad that you just spent 30 minutes of your life screaming at the Patriots? I'm never sad that I screamed at the Patriots. That's not the point. Point is,
I'll join you on Patriot Screaming at Island. Is that a location?
No, I don't want to go there.
You guys won.
I know.
I did like to return to another image. The image of you're on social media sharing other people's thoughts means you're not the one articulating the truth yourself at some level. And sometimes this was a thing I learned a long time ago about, like, just creativity in general, that sometimes you have something you're really passionate about and you look around and you say, this has already been said. And the teacher said, yes, of course, this has already been said. It hadn't been said by you.
Yeah.
And there's a different thing that occurs when you are the one saying, X, Y, and Z because it has to go through your whole system and be output in a way that the creation does something to you and it does something to your experience of the media that you're communicating it through. A large measure of what I've wanted to do with this and other things, I'm a moral philosopher. I have no place to put that material presently in any of the things that I create. This apparently is not mine to do. The universe is consistently thwarting me on these fronts. But part of wanting to come to this topic was of that sort, where it's just like, there's so much energy here. And when I start to talk through these things, I find I don't know as much as I think I know, is always what comes up first. It's like, I just have this energy apparently, and it's, I don't know where to put it, or even if it's going to output in ways that are constructive.
But that's the energy of change. That's the energy of creation and curiosity that creates space for healing and exploration. That's that same intentional hope that led you to have this conversation with me. There must be a better way. That's the thought of, how are we not collectively looking for a better way to do this that creates safety, that begets way less harm, that's not dehumanizing and pushing people beneath our feet. That doesn't mean it's not yours to express. That means you deserve somewhere with someone to talk through these ideas. I have a brilliant friend. She went on this adventure across the nation just to sit in a coffee shop and wait for someone to talk to. Introvert's nightmare to some degree, right? But bless her heart, she ended up putting together these stories and just celebrating life in a one-on-one setting, just collecting stories and collecting people and getting to know those around her wherever she was. And I think what that can teach us is the fact that we are not beholden to the narrative handed down from on high that this is how life must be. We don't have to submit to a life lived in a box where only the powerful deserve whatever, housing, tax breaks, food, free benefits, fill in the blank. But what happens is so many people believe they do not have a voice, combined with the cacophony of social media being used as a tool of manipulation instead of a place for people to just chat in a chat room, right? Like they are sitting next to them in a coffee shop. And we repress ourselves. We're quiet. Have you ever been yelled at on the internet by someone you didn't expect to be yelled at by? It pushes you back. It's scary. It's embarrassing. It can feel really hard. There are people who are not willing to be soft or be willing to be heard, to hear you out and cut you down. This reminder that if everyone around me is grieving something that's going on globally or nationally right now, that reminder allows us to stay in our humanity and approach them in theirs. Again, not in a huge, I don't have to have the ability to approach some politician with compassion, nor am I responsible to stand in their face and scream and shout, nor am I responsible to be polite if I see them. I am responsible to honor the humanity of those around me. That might look like holding them accountable. That might look like moving into a volunteer position locally. What does my need to be expressed have as an ability for manifestation? Like, how can I use all of this within me to create positive change around me?
This is the thing that, all right, so 45 minutes in, this is what I knew that we had hit something that I really wanted to hit. And this is it. It's what's a better way to do this? My focus is always what's a way that these suckers need to change.
Yeah,
and by suckers, I mean something else. That's two words that generally is coming out of the mouth of Samuel L. Jackson. It seems to me that like that's just my knee-jerk response to everything nationally.
Yeah.
And I assume it's the case. And maybe this, I don't know if, see, this is just the way I naturally pivot as a one, because I'm going to go to 4 space. When I can't fix things out there, I'm going to get into my stress zone. And stress means I get introspective. And what's a better way to do this is a great introspective question, because the other stuff's not working.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if the person you're facing is dysregulated, your job is not to win against them. And I think that's really important to remember. There's no winner or loser at the end of these conversations. If we are
correct
walking away dysregulated, then we just need to regulate for a different approach. And that doesn't, I don't mean that to sound so simple, because regulation is an ongoing action. It's an ongoing,
Is
effort.
that the target? Is that like the ultimate target? Like, I think that's what I'm kind of searching for here. Is like, in the midst of all of this, what's the word? What should we be aiming at? We can't change all the things.
Yeah, personally.
So what do you actually aim at?
Personally, I think it's regulation and communal care. For me, I look around my community. I was just with a friend this morning who is in danger right now. And we were talking about how our friendship came out of nowhere and feels very grounding. And for them was incredibly surprising based on what they knew of me 15, 20 years ago. And that is to say, just, young and trying to fit in. And when I look at who we have become as friends, but as individuals, I see a consistent willingness to be challenged and to move towards regulated, because regulated does not mean calm. It means open. It means engaged. It means available. And when we try to resist fascism or violence or federal control or all these awful, fucked up things that are happening, and we are dysregulated when doing it, it's when we melt down. It's when we can't process. It's when we lash out. It's when we react instead of respond. And again, I don't mean to say this in such a calm tone. I'm such a privileged human to be able to even talk about this, but our ability to choose the proximity of my friend who is right next to me and impact their life positively, impact their life by saying, you are not alone. You are not isolated. Your values matter. Your humanity matters. And I will do what I can to step in and stand alongside you through this. It takes us out of survival mode and puts us back into a state where we can make decisions, make our attention go toward what's important next. What is important next for them? If they have food, great. Do they have housing? Great. Do they have finances cared for? Great. Do they have health issues that are not attended? Okay, let's attend those. In the grand scheme of things, I can't stop if someone marches in and tries to take them. What I can do, I will work to do, but I can't do that if I'm showing up furious, dysregulated, scared. And so that self-awareness, an Enneagram tool is a great approach for this. Self-awareness, knowing how to orient into our bodies, not just because we're body types, but noticing am I breathing? Can I feel the ground beneath me? When is the last time I blinked? When is the last time I had a glass of water or even a taste of anything? Can I even just taste my breath, right? What in this moment can I do to stay in this moment? That allows us to be, if not present, at least a little more regulated in the moment. And that disarms fear. Not entirely, but it disarms our fear of, but what if they say this? But what if they tell me off? But what if it doesn't work, right? That future concern about something in this moment going wrong. If I can stay in this moment and allow myself to release the hold I have over the outcome, then it moves us away from debating and fighting, especially in the online world, which isn't always effective, to a state where we can say, help me understand what feels most at stake here for you. Because what feels most at stake here for me is my sense of self and my sense of humanity, my sense of valuing others as persons that matter. What feels at stake for me here is knowing that I'm your person, I'm your, former best friend, and yet you're willing to say that person deserves less than you because of their skin tone, or because of where they were born. That makes me question things you've said to me, because it doesn't align with who I know you to be. It doesn't align with your character. Now, if your character has changed, great. Help me understand that is a threat for you, because that's not us conceding, but it is us lowering the threat against their identity and allowing us to be a witness for them. There's a lot of people that say once you know someone's story, it's really hard to hate them. This is true. It's also very true that once you know someone's story, you can have sympathy for them and still feel hatred toward their actions, their choices, toward the people and the conditions that put them there. Well, what are we responsible for? The conditions around us. If my kid walks into my house and it is an unloving, unsafe condition for her, but I'm this wonderfully approachable, loving person in the rest of the world, it would make sense that she grows up to not want to talk to me, to be afraid of me, to say that the conditions you put me in didn't align with the character I saw everywhere else. So what am I supposed to think? Kind of, dipped into a little bit of like estranged parents and situation.
I mean, I likewise have a strong radar for consistency, especially because I did likewise have, I served as a pastor for a long time. I think the ethic of Jesus has a ton to say to our moment. And it's shocking to me that those with the crosses on their buildings are not elevating some of the stuff that I recall being central on these fronts. So consistency is a big thing. So but coming to that conversation, when I was catching, and I'm such a ready, fire, aim sort of person that I don't take the time to pause, the self-awareness, orient my body. There is what you do to see the change you want, but how you do it is often vastly more important. Mm-hmm. And I miss that commonly. And I suppose it's coming back to what's a better way to do this. And that's going to come through regulation. You regulate yourself first.
It is. And I think to your point of like, what's mine to do in my community around me, there will be people in your community around you that are trying to work towards the same goal as you, right? Mm-hmm. That you deeply disagree with. That will say, no, the approach of nonviolence is the only way. No, the approach of Molotov cocktails is the only way. No, there's a marriage between the two. You don't have to suddenly become this moral police officer for your community. You don't have to say, I'm getting tattoos to align with this group and I'm getting this tattoo. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to transform your entire identity to suddenly be this person that you think is acceptable. There is no ideal person. That's a whole nother conversation that we could go down for a long time. Everyone might have a belief that there's an ideal sense of self deep down. No, there's a true self. That true self is flawed, is morally wrong in a lot of ways. And it might be little ways, but they're not irredeemable and they're not valueless because they are imperfect. They're actually wonderfully interesting, right? Our differences are necessary. And so when we go into our immediate community, it will be easy to stay in that kind of fundamentalist black and white thinking that says, okay, that's the other and this is the us. That approach is exactly what got us here in the first place. When we create a sense of belonging, we do so internally first so that we do not enter a space and create others when they seem different enough from us. We create belonging internally so that we go into a space and we express belonging to others. It's like we teach our freaking preschoolers. You don't have to be best friends with everyone in the room, but you do have to respect and honor everyone in the room. And then you have, of course, teachers who say, these are all our friends. No, they're not. He pulls her hair every day. That's not friendship. That's a learning opportunity, but still, she doesn't have to go be near him. Don't you ever tell a little girl she has to go be near someone who harms her and call him friend. Again, another conversation.
No, when I hear there, and maybe it's the thing that I'm grieving, is that there are platforms from which we can like celebrate each other's diversity of opinions, diversity of values, diversity of like I can honor the fact that you really come to this political position from a very different vantage point. It makes total sense given your heritage and upbringing. This is where you would land. I could celebrate that. We can have conversation. It's the fact that the conversation itself has been doused with, with acid that, or that the foundations from which we were able to communicate before seem to evaporate such that those things aren't happening. But I suppose if I'm hearing you speak, reestablish those, make that your moment, do the work of locally.
Yeah.
And call out buffoonery when buffoonery needs to be called out on the harming another human being. This isn't acceptable. We can't.
Yeah.
That's the line that you can't.
It's kind of like that
cross.
Perspective. Don't laugh when someone else isn't laughing, right? If you're laughing at what happened to a person or what you said to a person and they aren't laughing, perhaps there's nothing funny. Perhaps what you're laughing at is harmful and hurtful and mean. And there are people who don't give a shit. There are people who say like, yeah, I don't care that I'm mean. Okay, cool. So the natural consequence of being mean is you're going to lose access to things and people. That's the choice. You have that choice to lose access. You have that privilege to go through the world however you would like. You need to recognize, and this I think is kind of what you're hitting on, is it used to feel, I do not agree that there really was truly shared values collectively, but it used to feel like there were some shared values culturally that we could have what feel like civil conversations. I think what is happening now is the systemic racism and internalized misogyny and, name all the other ways that patriarchy has impacted us are kind of masks off right now. And in response to any number of things. And I think that, again, comes back to, but you're threatening my position of power, you're threatening my influence, you're threatening my stability, you're threatening my income, whatever it is, you've created a threat in my life, and that's not okay for me. And because I'm in a power dynamic where you have none, I can actually affect change. Yeah.
I think you're right to say that, and as you're saying it, I would want to affirm that it may have been a shorthand for me to jump to shared facts, shared values. I meant white male facts.
I know. Damn, Jeff.
Anyway, I'm going to do some business with myself and get regulated and go back into those conversations with grace and a rigid commitment to their humanity. Yeah. Mandy, I love talking to you. You challenge my thoughts. I appreciate you exposing my privilege, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you in the future. You are doing great work in lots of places. Tell the folks where they can connect with you and the things that you do.
Yeah, well, Restorative Grief is an umbrella. So there's a book, there's a podcast, there's a private coaching group that's free, there's a Patreon that needs your support, and everything can be found at mandycapehart.com. And I love interacting on Instagram too. Threads as well, but certainly come find me at Mandy Capehart on Instagram.
Right. She does have great stuff on the Patreon, well worth checking out. Well, I will see you next time. Keep us in mind if you're doing anything fun, and we'll sign off.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everybody.
Hey friends, it's Jeff. We're getting to interview some of the most intriguing people in the Enneagram world. There are already 20 plus interviews up at aroundthecircle.org, and we're continuing to add more. That site is where we're gathering and platforming all of our best work. Much of it is available for free. Katie Whitlock and I have been doing deep studies working through wings, stance, fear, anger, and shame in our Rewired series. I'm beginning to release chapters from my next Enneagram book, which I'm calling The Steps, for early review for your consideration. And we have monthly online workshops in which 30 or so folks gather to talk about their type. There's audiobooks, there's videos, there's lots of fun stuff, lots to like. Go to aroundthecircle.org, and may all good things be yours.